I'm finally in a good place financially. They go to college. They've actually managed multiple part-time jobs. And now they've landed a well-paying job straight out of school. So firstly, kudos, right?
Yeah,
Not everyone gets
absolutely.
that opportunity.
No.
So amidst that hard grind, they've also been smart with the money. So fascinatingly, at 23, they managed to save, invest, and avoid debt. I mean, this almost sounds unbelievable, to be honest. So again, well
Especially in
done.
the States with college fees
Yeah.
being up to 80, 90 grand
Yeah,
US.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really understand that, but avoiding debt doesn't mean don't have
Many
debt.
options available, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, so from here, this person has even now built an emergency fund and starting to save towards retirement.
Like a 401k, the super equivalent or something.
Must be. So they're saying it feels good to have my financial future on track, especially since I didn't grow up with much. So the picture here is they've worked their way up from not the slums, but maybe some sort of lower middle class.
Yep.
Now, here's the thing. My parents are a financial disaster. They've always lived beyond their means, racking up credit card debt, taking out loans they couldn't afford, and making bad investments. Wow. They've declared bankruptcy twice. So that must mean each parent. And
Always at 4 times, do you reckon?
No. One parent each.
Okay.
And every time they get a fresh start, well, or maybe,
Possibly,
maybe 4 times.
Yeah.
The worst thing there is, I thought in America, well, at least in Australia, if you're bankrupt, you are put on hold for certain things.
Fun fact. So culturally in America, they encourage entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And they recognize that you may fail in that endeavor.
Okay.
So bankrupts aren't punished as severely in other countries because it's a natural consequence of trying but failing. So they want you to try again.
Okay, all right. So
there's one cultural difference.
Yeah, because here you're blocked from opening a business for at least like 4 or 5 years or something.
You're done.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that makes America great.
Again.
I can't tell if I was baited there.
So they've declared bankruptcy twice, and every time they get a fresh start, they go right back to the old habits. It's like they never learn. This part's getting a bit judgmental for me, but maybe it's factual. Who knows? So now they're drowning in debt again. I like how they've used the alliteration of drowning debt. Seems very conscious writing. And they've come to me for help. They want me to co-sign on a loan to consolidate their debts and ask for money to cover their mortgage and car payments.
Okay, so it's both the consolidation and
holy shit! I didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah, I didn't realize. So they're asking for you to be the co-signer of the loan, and for additional payments to cover the mortgage and car payments while they pay off the debts.
Correct.
Okay. Wow, that's a triple whammy.
Yeah. Jeez. So the guilt trips are relentless. We raised you, we sacrificed for you, and now it's your turn to help us. It'd be interesting what culture this is as well.
Yeah.
I mean, look, all people are capable of saying this, but some cultures are expected to say it. That's the difference.
Yeah. And look, I think it's a good call out.
Yeah.
100%.
They've even played the "you owe us for all we did for you." That makes me think it's not a standard culture. I just don't. I just haven't. It's possibly a false.
No. I think it's a good call out because it also speaks to, and not to stereotype, but in some cultures there may not be reflection on that being a piece of emotional blackmail.
Yeah.
Yep.
Again, I'm not entirely familiar with that because my parents never asked me to help them, even though they helped their parents.
Some parents go out of their way to make sure that they're never in that position culturally because of what they experienced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The truth is, I can't do it. I refuse to bail them out of their bad decisions. Sounds cold, but I'm tired of being their financial safety net, which means he already has been bailing them out, or she, he or she.
He or she's already attempted.
I've seen what happens when you enable their behaviour. They never change, and I'm not willing to put my hard-earned stability at risk for them. See, you know what? I don't think it's the money to help cover the mortgage and car payments. That you can stop on a whim. To co-sign a loan, that's 30 years on the hook.
Yeah. Yeah,
And not only that, it's likely that they will forfeit. So you're taking out a loan you didn't want to take out.
Yep.
Okay. You know, it's funny. I haven't actually read this properly until I'm reading it out loud because this is worse than what I thought it was. I've told them I'm not co-signing it. Yeah, boom. That just already said it, right? I'm not co-signing anything and I won't be giving them money. They're furious, calling me ungrateful, selfish, and heartless. This almost sounds like dealing with a gambling addict. I feel guilty because they're my parents and I do love them. But I also know that helping them would just be throwing good money after bad. They need to take responsibility for their own mess and learn to live within their means. I'm done sacrificing my peace and security for their poor choices. Now, people could judge me for this, and they're already members of the family that have dropped communication with me. They think I'm abandoning my parents. I have to protect myself and my future. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but that conversation we had about intervention, coaching, suffering, all falls into here because this really I'm reading as a post about my parents. They've raised me, they've coached me their whole life, and now I'm at a point where I'm coaching them. And part of that coaching process is suffering.
Yeah, and the why and the what as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, look, obviously we're not going to tell this individual what to do, but we can unpack this story and see what options are available and how you'd go about it. For me, this is an emotional conundrum or spiritual conundrum, if you will, because if you take it on a purely financial or logical, dare I say, heartless perspective, to use their words, obviously you don't get involved at all, right? Now that being said, in this case, what they're really grappling with is an emotional or spiritual issue. The conflict of, and they're using the words abandoning there, or those words have been used against them as well.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I will say is, again, to your point, I'm not sure what culture this is, but there is some element of emotional immaturity around the emotional blackmail and the ungrateful comments and things like that.
It is a 23-year-old, and this 23-year-old still got a long way to go.
A long way to go.
But for 23, old head on young shoulders.
Yeah. And look, that could have been because of the trauma they experienced from having been in this situation with their parents and witnessing all these things, Some people who've come to be frugal and really good with money management came from an environment where all the other behaviours were modelled, right?
Yeah, you raised one of my points, which was reading between the lines here, I pick up a bit of Newton's third law, which is for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction.
Yeah, good call. yeah, I think that's nailed it. I think that's what this situation is. Like, I've learned what not to do.
And I picked that up. In particular, this here, I have to protect myself and my future. This seems like the whole victim assaulter hero triangle in replay, where in response to being victimized, this is the way I become a hero and still caught in that trap. But I mean, that's not to take away. I mean, they've done something incredible. I mean, to get to this point, that's a lot of hard yakka. This puts them in, setting themselves up to be in the top 1%, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's to be financially stable at 23, no debts, have gone, paid off your college debts, the good job, and then be in a position where you've got a savings buffer and a retirement plan. It's fantastic. And
probably also, I mean, look, I got an assumption, but you can't do everything, so it might also mean you're boring as batshit.
Oh, probably, very likely. And look, you see those stories with some of the youngsters who've bought a house really early, like they lived off Mega Ring and stuff like that. So again, that could be because of their past experiences, right?
Yeah.
Newton's third law, as you say.
All right, so there's emotional processing to go through. What else is worthwhile?
You've also got to evaluate this from the emotional perspective of what's the worst that could happen in all the situations, right? Let's say one scenario, you do lend them the money, you make these payments and they default on all these things. Then you're not going to talk to them ever again anyway, right? Potentially. That's one scenario. I'm going worst case here.
Okay.
That's one thing. And then you look at, what does abandoning mean? What's the chances of your parents being homeless? It's easy for the extended family to blame you and assign you all the responsibility. But
what are they doing to help?
yeah, I mean, because for me, what I'm also seeing here is the parents aren't actually willing to make a lifestyle change. They still want to keep their current home and their current car, new car, possibly. So
That's too much of a leap for me to.
I appreciate that, but what I'm saying is the reason I'm highlighting that is, well, is this a case of they could kind of live with you and then, not have to pay a mortgage or car payments and use that money to pay off the loan and maybe don't require a guarantor? We don't know the technicalities around the financing either and what options have been explored. But I think for the parents to only consider one option is also a little myopic. And also I think for the 22-year-old, yes, they don't want the parents to suffer, but the other question to ask is, well, how do I prevent them from being homeless? Because that's probably the worst case scenario here as well. And then you could ask yourself, could you live with that scenario?
That's not even discussed here, though. I don't know. The way I read this, I think they've made peace with the decision. They may not have thought through the outcome as worst case as what you've articulated. That could be for a variety of reasons. Could be immaturity of foresight. Could also be that that's not a plausible option based on the scenario that's not yet communicated.
Yeah, exactly.
To me, this is more about spiritually, how do I make peace with not owing my parents for raising me when it wasn't my choice.
Yeah, and look, again, depending on your cultural background, I don't think it's a fair blackmail. Like, your parents chose to have you. It's not 1800s where you had kids as farmhands.
Yeah.
It's not an investment.
Yeah.
I know some parents don't think that way, but
that was the catch, right? That was the transaction, right? You're going to put up with me as your parent for 30 years, help out, and then you get the land.
Yeah. It was. But, and in the process, in ancient countries, you had 7 kids so that you had extra farm workers.
Yeah.
You might lose one son to the wolves.
Yeah.
The losses were high, and all those 7 kids didn't survive, unfortunately.
Yeah, disease.
So it's a different dynamic,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
The women married out to another family where the liability was taken care of.
Yeah.
So again, like you said, it is a spiritual conundrum. It sounds like they've made peace with elements of it, but I would wonder, what are you losing here, and what's the risk to your parents that you're comfortable with?
Yeah.
Could it be homelessness? And then what other options they've got? I don't know.
Would you like my take?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, I'm prepared.
Oh, very nice.
All right, so again, I've approached this like you from a spiritual point of view. So I think firstly, if this person came to me in person, then I would acknowledge them. And again, I recognise just from the post 23, the situation they're in, the old head on young shoulders, which we've discussed, and that I also notice and hear there is still some processing that might be in place because of that whole every action equal and opposite. So if we go into what I would communicate with them is, I think from a spiritual point of view, you need to assess this from a short, medium, and long term. And at no point I'm actually judging their decision or even giving them feedback on what to decide. That's their choice.
Exactly.
All right. But the things that they need to be aware of. In the short term, I'd say as hard as it feels right now, this is as easy as it gets. Right? Everything only gets worse from here. And so the immediate thing that you need clarity on is, how do you navigate your pressing issue? Do I sign the papers or not? So yes or no to funds. And when thinking about how to solve that, you've already indicated no, you won't. But regardless, what you need to consider is, A, how do I manage the impulse? All right, 20 years' time. Is this something that I'm willing to stand behind and say, well, with what I knew when I was 23, this was the best decision I could have made?
Hand on heart.
Yeah, you don't need to say at 43, was this the best decision? That's focusing on what didn't happen. But you need to be able to say, with what I knew at 23, what I had access to,
Yeah.
is this the best decision?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then once you've made that call, you really need to start thinking about how you're going to share this outcome with the impacted parties, right? The communication plan, the order of talking to people, how you're going to talk to them. Some people need written information, some people need verbal, some people need face-to-face. What order, right? All these type of things. And part of that then, why you need that communication strategy or plan is because you are going to have collateral that needs to be factored in.
Yeah. That's
And
probably
this
why
can-
they're emotionally torn.
And then this includes things like the homelessness, etc., that you're mentioning. So, as difficult as this navigation is, I personally think it's the easiest part of the journey ahead. When we go into the medium term, right, what we're talking about, and I think this is the hardest, in the medium term is the decision's been affected and now we have to navigate the change to life. Things will never be the same as what they were. And so now we go through grief. So you have potential fallout. Maybe this might be the first time that you don't have anywhere to go for Thanksgiving.
Or Christmas.
Yeah. All right. Maybe this is the first time that your parents can't host because they're homeless. Right.
Yeah.
There's lots of things.
And maybe the extended family is not extending invites either.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then you've got the journey that everyone has with grief. At some point, you're presented with reality and it just makes no sense. How did I get here? I don't understand, because these are perspectives that fall outside what you currently recognize and process.
Yeah.
And that's a journey in transition.
Yeah, because it's not purely logical. It is an emotional, spiritual component.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then lastly, with change and going through that journey, where do you make sure you care for yourself? Being financially stable is important, gives you a lot of freedom, but it's not the key to everything. And so what's going to be your plan for ensuring quality of sleep, that you actually sit down and work through all these feelings and not succumb to vices? Right. And I think this is the hardest part of the journey where many people fall off the bike. And then if you do survive the medium, how do we play the long game? And this is where it's important not to dwell on what could have been, because that's that lost mindset that we're talking about. And you got to remember, life moves on, right? More money can be made, more relationships can be built. Maybe not with the people that are impacted, but there's other experiences and sources of love that can enrich in your life. And the other part is sit on forgiveness. Don't forget about that. So at some point, regardless of how painful the relationships are with the parents and other people in that story, in the end, everybody is trying to survive and they use the tools they know how to. In this case, it's conflicted with your worldview, and that's been a source of tension.
Yeah.
So that's my advice for this one.
Oh, very well articulated.
Thank you. Do you have anything more to add?
No, I agree with all of that. And I think, like you said, that short, medium, long term, you've got to deal with the fallout accordingly. At each stage, yeah. And there will be fallout.
Yeah.
You can't have your cake and eat it too with this kind of stuff.